let me back up. I grew up the second of 3 kids in Fresno. My older brother Danny was the golden child, quarterback in high school, now sells insurance and drives a lease truck he can't quite afford. My younger sister Mia was the baby, still is at 26. And me, I was always the responsible one. Which sounds like a compliment until you realize what it actually means in a family like mine. It means the one who pays. It started small. I was 23, my first real paycheck barely 2 months old, when Mia needed $200 for a car repair. I gave it to her without thinking twice. Never saw it again. Never expected to. That's what family does, right?
Except it kept happening.
Danny needed $600 for a security deposit when I was 25, on an apartment he could have afforded if he hadn't just bought a boat. My mother needed $1,200 for a plumbing emergency when I was 27, an emergency that turned out to be a full kitchen remodel, which I found out about a year later, staring at granite countertops in a Facebook photo my mom had captioned, "Finally, my dream kitchen." The restaurant smelled like butter and old wood and my mother's perfume, the same bottle of Chanel she's worn to every family dinner since I was in middle school. Candlelight, low music, the kind of place where the menu doesn't list prices next to the specials because if you have to ask, you're not the target customer. I remember thinking, walking in, that it felt like a nice night. I should have known better by the time the bread basket arrived, and my father was already on his second glass. Danny ordered the 2.5-pound lobster.
Twice.
Mia ordered a $180 bottle of champagne to toast Mom and Dad, without asking if anyone wanted to split it. My father drank wine like he was trying to empty the restaurant cellar, and my mother kept saying, "Get whatever you want, it's a celebration," to everyone but me, because apparently I already knew my role. I ordered the cheapest entree on the menu, a habit so automatic by that point I didn't even notice I was doing it until much later. When the check came, the waiter set it down in the exact center of the table, and there was this half-second of silence where everyone suddenly found their plates fascinating. Then my father picked it up, glanced at it, and slid it toward me like he was passing the salt. "You're the one with the good job. You're paying." So I pulled my full credit report that night, the detailed one, the kind most people never bother to read past the summary page. And there it was, halfway down page 3, an account I didn't recognize opening. A credit card. Opened 11 years ago. Credit limit $25,000. Current balance $22,416. 4 missed payments in the last 5 months. Status: seriously delinquent. I stared at the account number. I stared at the opening date. 11 years ago, I was 20 years old, a sophomore in college, working part-time at a smoothie shop. I had never applied for a $25,000 credit card in my life. The primary account holder was my father. I was listed as a joint account holder. Not an authorized user, a joint holder, which meant equal legal responsibility for every cent. And there was a signature on file. My signature, or something close enough to fool a bank teller 11 years ago. That was the moment I stopped being scared and started being an accountant. I spent the next 10 days building a file the way I'd build one for a client. Timeline, dollar amounts, statement copies, the forged signature flagged and compared side by side with 3 documents that actually held my real signature. Every evening after work I'd sit at my kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold beside my laptop, cross-referencing statement dates against family events I remembered, the Cabo trip photos Mia had posted, the boat Danny had shown up with at 4th of July, the new patio furniture that appeared in my parents' backyard the same month a $4,000 charge hit the account labeled simply, home. Watching 11 years of my own life get rewritten in front of me, one line item at a time, was its own kind of grief. Nobody warns you that finding out you've been quietly used for over a decade doesn't feel like anger at first. It feels like standing in a room you thought you knew and realizing the walls were never where you thought they were. I filed an identity theft report with the FTC. I filed a police report, which felt strange and clinical, giving a detective my own father's date of birth while he typed without looking up, like this was just another Tuesday for him, which I suppose it was. I opened a fraud dispute with the bank, and because I do this professionally, I knew exactly which documents would move it fastest. The notarized signature comparison, the timeline showing when I first became aware, the written statement establishing I had never once made a payment toward the account, not directly and not indirectly. The house smelled like it always does on Sundays, garlic and my mother's candle collection competing for dominance. My father sat at the head of the table with a folder of his own, a much thinner one than mine, and announced that Danny wanted to open his own insurance agency, that it would need a startup loan, and that the family needed to come together to co-sign it. He looked directly at me when he said, "The family." Danny wouldn't meet my eyes. Mia was scrolling her phone under the table, the same way she had at the restaurant. My mother refilled everyone's water like this was any other Sunday. I set my folder on the table. Nobody said anything at first. My father actually smiled, like he assumed I'd come prepared to help. "See," he said to my mother, "she always comes through." "I know," I said. "That's actually what I want to talk about." I opened the folder and slid the first page across the table, the same way he'd slid the lobster bill toward me 3 weeks earlier. It was the credit report. His name. My name. A signature that wasn't mine. The room went very quiet. $22,400, I said. "That's the current balance on an account you opened using my identity when I was 20 years old. My credit score dropped 70 points because of missed payments on a card I never knew existed." My father's face didn't change right away. That's the part one remember most, the half-second where he was still deciding which version of himself to be. "I was going to tell you eventually," he said. "It was for emergencies. For the family." "You funded Danny's boat," I said. "You funded a business that failed in 11 months. You funded a country club membership. None of that is an emergency. That's a lifestyle, and I've been paying for it without knowing it for 11 years. Danny finally looked up. "Dad, is that true?" His voice cracked a little on the word true, and for the first time I saw something on his face that looked like it might actually be shame, or maybe just fear that his own name was somewhere in that folder too. It wasn't, not directly, but I let the silence answer for him. "It was never supposed to get this big," my father said, and for a second his voice lost its certainty completely. "I was going to pay it down before you ever needed to know." "You had 11 years, I said. "You had a boat's worth of years, and a country club's worth of years, and a granite countertop's worth of years." Mia finally put her phone down.
Wait.
Mom knew about this. My mother's face answered before her mouth did. She set the pitcher down harder than she meant to, water sloshing over the rim onto the tablecloth, and for once she didn't reach for a napkin to fix it. My mother's water pitcher was still in her hand, frozen halfway to Mia's glass. "Rachel, honey, we would have paid it back." My father tried the same voice he'd used at the restaurant, the flat, factual voice. "You're the one with the good job." "I know," I said. "That's exactly why you picked me 11 years ago. Not because you loved me the most. Because my credit was the cleanest." He didn't have an answer for that. For the first time in my whole life, I watched my father run out of something to say. I want to tell you the rest wrapped up neatly that same afternoon, but real families don't work that way, and I promised myself a long time ago I wasn't going to lie to you in this story just to make the ending feel bigger. What actually happened is quieter, and honestly more satisfying. The bank ruled in my favor 5 weeks later. The fraudulent account came off my credit report entirely, though it took another 2 months for my score to climb back to where it had been. My father was left legally responsible for the debt on paper in his name alone and had to work out a payment plan with the bank directly. He sold the boat he'd bought Danny, the one that had never actually been Danny's, technically since it was on the fraudulent card the whole time, to make the first payment.